Oh my God.
They
Killed Kenny. Okay. It is time to go live with the Audible, the footballguys.com podcast. Cecil Lammey, Sigmund Bloom, Matt Waldman, Dr. Jene Bramel to talk all things fantasy football and maybe some tomfoolery along the way as well. Appreciate y'all for joining us tonight. And Bloom, we need a game update. Some Thursday night games aren't really fun or good or interesting, and this one is a little different than that.
It is, at least in terms of the stakes and in terms of the nature of this matchup, considering the epic back and forth game that we saw between these teams 3 weeks ago. But it has not been as good of a game offensively. It's been a little choppy, to be honest. Russell Wilson's been sacked a few times. He's been more efficient than we've seen the last 2 weeks. They're not moving up and down the field like they were, even though Arizona's been giving up a lot of points lately. Carlos Hyde has been the lead back. He hasn't gotten hurt yet. Tyler Lockett is operating in the short yardage areas, and DK Metcalf had a nice touchdown. He had a short touchdown. DK Metcalf had a touchdown on a play that Russell Wilson kept alive. It's really Kyler Murray is underwhelmed in this one, and it's Seattle's defense has actually shown up, and maybe the worst defense in the league, but really holding Kyler Murray down as a passer. And Max Williams, remember him? Remember whenever we thought the Steelers should have gotten him instead of the Ravens? But, he had the one big pass play. Kenyon Drake got a little banged up. He did get the one rushing touchdown here for the Cardinals. But, these teams that are thought of as these offensive juggernauts, it's been more, especially Seattle's defense, that has been carrying the night so far.
Okay, we jump into it as always, making the injury rounds with Dr. Jene Bramel here. And Dr. Jene, well, he's on our background tonight, and we've got some issues to talk about with Detroit. I almost want to send it all to you, and I'm sorry I'm hogging it, fellas, because I know Matt and Sig, you'll get mad at me. But, dude, we have Stafford with the thumb injury on his throwing hand. We have Galladay that's not going to play because he got downgraded. You have Marvin Jones Jr., and I sound drunk when I say that, who is limited. And then what with DeAndre Swift today? Now with the concussion, we don't. Last I checked, they didn't know when he got it, and he practiced Wednesday, and then Thursday it's like, oh, he's got a concussion. He's in the protocol. Okay, and again, guys, I'm sorry because there's like 4 injuries right there. But Dr. Jene, what the hell is going on with the Lions?
Yeah, a lot. Pretty much every position on the offense, as far as the skill position players and the quarterback, are going to be concerning this week. Matthew Stafford's thumb injury is being called a partially torn thumb ligament. Stafford was a little bit less happy about saying he was going to play on Wednesday versus what he was saying on Monday, which sounded pretty optimistic. And then it was reported that he looked pretty good on Thursday and that maybe they were just waiting to allow him to throw until today. I think that's probably what's going on. They'll see how he feels on Friday at practice and then make a determination. But Stafford is the type of guy who tends to play through almost every injury. The back fractures that he had last year were just something that he just wasn't able to structurally play through. But if he can grip the football and throw it accurately, he's going to play. And I think it's trending in that direction, but Friday is going to be pretty important. DeAndre Swift is not playing this weekend. It doesn't make much difference when the concussion occurred. The symptoms were reported Wednesday into Thursday, got put into the protocol on Thursday, and this really is not enough time to reliably get him through the exercise protocol. I suppose there's a chance at which they do a little bit with him tomorrow, do a little bit more on Saturday. I don't know if that game's at home or not. I don't know where the Detroit Lions play this week, but if it's a road game, there's zero chance of him playing. If it's at home, I'd give him less than 10%. So very unlikely he's going to be able to go. The wide receivers, not a lot being said about Galladay today. It remains to be seen whether or not Wednesday's practice was the let's see what you can do, and then we'll sort of shut it down for the rest of the week if you're feeling okay, or let's shut it down for the rest of the week if it didn't go as well as expected. And the Lions aren't saying. So I think because he's not practiced in 2 weeks, you'd really like to see him get on the field as often as possible and get some conditioning in. So the missing practice on Thursday is a big red flag. Marvin Jones is going to play. I don't have too much concern about that. He's been on the injury report off and on with knee issues in the past. This is more maintenance than anything else. And I think the Lions, knowing that both Golladay and Danny Amendola are dealing with hip injuries that could keep them out, and likely will keep them out, given that Amendola hasn't practiced this week, are going to be even more cautious with Marvin Jones, knowing that he's the primary receiver. TJ Hawkinson, also dealing with a toe situation, was able to play through it last week. Didn't have nearly the productive game that he had back in week 9, but it's a good sign that he's practicing a little bit more at this point than he was last week. So he's likely to play. Just how healthy he is a harder question to answer. So from top to bottom, I think Stafford and Hawkinson are banged up, but likely to go. Swift and Golladay, unlikely to play. Amendola could turn into a little bit of a game time decision, and I think Jones is going to play.
Gene, good evening, Gene. I could come up with a big flowery intro here. I'll just come down like this. Are we going to see Davante Adams? What should we be looking for tomorrow as a good or bad sign?
Boy, this, just going through the injury report today was one after the other. Boy, that isn't good. That doesn't sound good. What's going on here? And Adams falls into that category as well. So Adams was another player that sounded optimistic about being able to go earlier this week. Wasn't quite as optimistic on Wednesday, sort of said that, this is going to be a little bit easier for me to play through and to convince the medical staff that I can go because it's a joint situation that isn't likely to be significantly aggravated in the same way that a soft tissue injury like the hamstring thing that he was dealing with earlier in the year would be, but said he didn't feel right on it, tried to get it through, and was able to be pretty explosive in courting that, that kind of going up the ladder to catch that touchdown pass on Sunday. But it doesn't seem to be as responding as well as he'd hoped. Not clear exactly what the injury is. It looks like he just sort of got tripped up on that play down the sideline. Wasn't particularly violent mechanism, didn't have the look of a clear high ankle sprain. So not really sure where we are. I think Adams, we're probably going to see him do something in practice tomorrow, give it a go, and then have him evaluated through the weekend. And he's going to be a tough call, but thankfully he's, an important enough player to the Packers and to interest around the league that I think we're going to get some reports on him from the national and local media members through the weekend. He was able to talk to the media the last couple of days. I think that's generally a good sign. I've got him marked likely to play as of Thursday night, but Friday's practice participation in media sessions are going to be very important in telling us whether he's going to be able to go and just how active and productive he may be able to be.
Gene, how are you feeling about Alvin Kamara?
Pretty good. He says, I'm going to go by what Kamara says, which is that he said he's feeling pretty good. Today was just sort of a rest day, so to speak. We've seen him listed on the injury report with a foot injury already this year and have him come back and be very productive over the last couple of weeks. I don't think, knowing that the Saints are pretty much refusing to talk about injuries this year, to allow him to talk to the media today and say he's good to go, that sounds a lot like what we saw a couple of weeks ago. So I'm feeling pretty good about it.
It is the Audible Live here Thursday nights on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/footballguys, DOTCOM. Dr. Gene, it is a Broncos show. So Drew Lock not practicing on Wednesday, practicing on Thursday, but Drew Lock and Brett Rippon both talking to the media today. And as Vic Fangio said on Monday, Drew Lock is our starter if he's healthy. And then I always put in the fact that, he's hurt. So
yeah, he's not.
What do you think of the chances? And Adam Schefter coming out on our station on 104.3 The Fan. Look at that fan coming out on our station and our station only, and saying that he's in a lot of pain. Why would they play him? Because he's in a lot of pain. So ribs injury, not as severe. Him and Drew Brees have the same injuries, by the way. Like last year they had the thumb. And then this year they both have the ribs, although Brees is much more severe.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Drew Lock and his chances of playing? Not playing well this week, but just actually playing.
Well, I hadn't heard that Schefter said that, but that would be my gut feeling is, we saw what Drew Lock looked like last week when he wasn't healthy enough to throw the ball. Wasn't comfortable in the pocket, couldn't drive the ball downfield, more of his usual decision-making and accuracy issues that we've seen off and on during the course of the year. And now with a strained oblique muscle in addition to the rib bruises there, very little chance that he's going to be close to full strength. And he's been struggling already. So for the same reasons that we felt like it probably made sense to rest him when when he was dealing with the throwing shoulder contusion. The same thing goes here. You just don't see him being accurate through this. It's not going to be an easy thing. It's not, this muscle issue cannot be taped, braced, pain management through necessarily. The ribs could be, but the oblique is not going to be. Any twisting motion is going to be a problem for him, which is why he did not look comfortable last week. So, this is not a situation where Drew Lock has proven that he is far and above the best option on the roster when he's 80 to 85%. And I think that's where they're going to be this week. So barring something, where he's made a lot of improvement, or that the limited practice work that he did on Thursday ends up, looking better than expected on Friday, I think he's going to miss a week, and then they'll reevaluate him to follow.
Gene, unlike Cecil, I'm not going to compress these injury questions together based on a team. I'm going to give Alan Lazard a chance to breathe here, because he is active. If you had him on IR and you try to set your lineup, you're going to get a violation that says you can't set your lineup if your commissioner set it up right. You got to create a roster spot for him on your fantasy football roster. Should you create a spot for him in your lineup? Or perhaps more importantly, whether or not Adams plays, it factors into this. We're looking at a red-hot Marquez Valdez-Scantling. How much could Lazard cool him down this week?
A little bit. From what we heard earlier in the week, when there was some more optimism about Adams playing, was Matt LaFleur said, he's feeling better. He's returning to full strength. The soreness that we saw last week, he's worked through, and it's not anything that we needed to shut him down. Them putting him on the active roster means very little, because that had to happen this week, no matter whether or not he was going to be able to play or not, because his window and the designated return window, those 3 weeks of practice, was closing this week. And if they didn't activate him, he was done for the year. So that was always going to happen. But I think it's a good sign that he's been able to do those limited and individual drills all week long. It doesn't mean that he's going to come back to immediately a 60 snap and 40 route situation. Although if Adams is not able to play, you could easily see him, if he's feeling well enough, getting a full workload. I think they would plan to have that not be the case. I don't think they want to go from him having soreness last week to this week a little bit of limited practice and then a full go. That may be necessary depending on Adams. I don't know that I'd have him back in the lineup, Lazard, right away. You'd hope that he gets through this game and shows that he's in pretty good condition. But yeah, I think he definitely could cut in to the overall targets for Marquez Valdez-Scantling, just because there's only so many to go around, with Devontae Adams and the running backs there taking up as many targets and touches as they do. So I think we're going to see Lazard on the active roster. Whether he gets 20 to 30 snaps or 40 to 50 probably has a ton to do with, as you said, whether or not Adams is able to go or not.
All right. Well, since Bloom sounded like some of these campaign ads that I see on commercials lately, and Cecil's like doing all these, like Cecil's combining everything, I'm just going to do whatever the F I want to on this particular question. And I'm going to ask you too. The first is just basically, I'm curious about Kyler Murray with, this shoulder arm injury, and and he's playing through it right now and wincing every time he throws. Is there a chance that he doesn't play next week because of the fact that all this adrenaline and it's keeping it reheated, that he's just kind of gotten his way through this? And then the second question, if the answer is quick on that, is Ezekiel Elliott and his hamstring, how much is he going to be impacted, this coming weekend? Are we going to get a chance to see, 90, 95% Ezekiel Elliott, or is it more like 80, 85% Ezekiel Elliott?
No, I think Elliott is probably okay, simply because he's fully practiced and has looked like he's able to do what he needs to do. Again, I think an Andy Dalton-led Cowboys offense is probably the primary concern that you'd have for Elliott. And I thought he looked pretty good last week, or before the bye week, rather, with a limited practice that he was able to do. Not full strength, as you said. I don't think we'd say 100%, but it's nice to see him fully practice and out of the bye. And I think I'll be surprised if he's anything other than not listed on the end of the week game status report. It looks like in a little bit of video that I saw that, when he was driven, Kyler Murray was driven into the ground by the Seahawks. He's probably got a little bit of a shoulder separation there. Those things are painful. Any movement that stretches that arm away from the body is going to tax that joint up on the top of the shoulder a little bit, which is why they were trying to keep it as warm as possible. Don't know whether or not they addressed that in the locker room or not. He looks a little bit better coming out here in the second half. He's going to have 10 days to recover before next week's game. So assuming that he doesn't take another hit on that area and run the risk of a little bit higher grade injury, I think you'd probably see him take a few days off and hopefully not have so much stiffness and range of motion issues that he'd be able to return in week 12 without too much trouble.
It is the Audible Live here, Thursday night live show, YouTube channel, and of course on Apple Music and on Spotify. However you take in the Audible, we say thank you. And as always, thank Dr. Jene Bramel spinning around the league, talking about those injuries. We did have a Kittle question. I saw your LOL in the chat room, Dr. Jene, about could Kittle possibly be back by the fantasy championship week of week 16. I don't know if that LOL was meant for that question or if you were just LOLing at some of your chin comments that were coming through in the chat room. So let's go there, man. Let's see. Kittle swears up and down he can be back, but the 49ers aren't going anywhere. So to break off a Ricky Waters reset, for who? For what? Like, is he going to be back or not?
Maybe. I wasn't laughing at the Kittle question. I would not laugh at Kittle at all. One of the toughest dudes in the league. And if he says he wants to come back and the Niners allow him to come back regardless of where they are in the playoff race, they will. I was laughing at them assigning my chin the exactly the moniker of the best run defense in the league. So that's what got a chuckle there. I don't think Kittle can really make much determination right now. It's a fracture in the middle part of his foot. That bone is an unusual broken bone to have broken in football, so that we don't have a lot of comparison there. It was given a 6 to 8 week recovery timetable, and that's going to put him right up against week 15 and 16. So even if he does come back, I don't know that you're going to see him have anything close to a full and effective workload in those all-important weeks 15 and 16. If he's designated to return a little bit sooner than expected, we get lots of positivity from him. Maybe you see him take 40 to 50 snaps and get enough routes and targets that he's effective in a fantasy championship situation. But I would not be counting on him to return. If you get him back and he's effective and he can contribute on in one of those situations, so much the better. But definitely would not count on it.
I'm going to do it's time for the races. Time to do the win place show that we do every week, Gene. And the three horses are Austin Eckler, Christian McCaffrey, Raheem Mostert. In what order do these guys get back on the field?
Mostert for sure comes back next week after they come out of the bye. I don't think there's too much question about that, and I think he'll probably be healthy enough to do so. I still think we're likely to see McCaffrey before Eckler. I was not very impressed by Eckler's Instagram post showing him running in a straight line, which looked to me he wasn't quite at full strength yet, hasn't done anything football-related activity that we can see, and he hasn't cut yet. So I'm still thinking that's going to be week 12 at the earliest, which would be next week, but that would assume he gets a little bit of conditioning in. Again, he's doing some of that, but I don't know that it's great to see him running at speed. That's important. Were he not doing that, then we'd have to be worried about week 14 and beyond. But I think next week is probably still optimistic. Unless they designate him to return really early next week, then maybe there's a chance he plays. But even at that, it's going to be a relatively limited role. So this is a situation, if you're hoping for Eckler, you want him back in 14, 15, and 16, those weeks at close to full strength as possible, so you know what you've got and you trust him in your lineup if that's what you want to do. McCaffrey, McCaffrey got enough information that they've elected, to just sort of bring him along a little bit more slowly. Surgery was apparently never on the table, but this is one of those 2 to 3 week injuries that could become 3 to 4 if he doesn't recover quickly. I don't think they're going to put him out there and risk kind of what we saw with James Conner last year, which is he feels okay, but structurally may not be there all the way yet, and took another wrong place, wrong time hit and cost him another 2 or 3 weeks. So I still think it's a little bit more likely that we see McCaffrey at full strength in week 13 than Eckler. So we'll go Mostert, McCaffrey, Eckler.
All right. Well, Teddy Bridgewater, how long is he going to be out?
I did not like what Matt Rule said about him today. Essentially made it sound like we're not making as much progress. There's more stiffness and maybe a little bit of, it sounds weird to say that there's stiffness in the joint, and then for me to say the primary issue is that there's a lack of stability there that they're not comfortable with. So stiffness meaning that he doesn't have the range of motion there, but also when he plants, there's some extra movement there. So one of those two things is going on. Is not done as much in practice as they'd like him to. Rule said that if he was close enough to play, they'd allow him to play, but they were not going to put him out there if he wasn't full strength. And I think they're preparing to not play with him this week. So, and Bridgewater is a tough kid, obviously. So if he's not able to do much in practice on Friday, I don't know that they're going to rule him out, but it would not be surprising to see the Panthers rule him out on Friday. Definitely a ton more pessimistic on him than what it sounded like Sunday into Monday after the MRI said that there wasn't a ton structurally going on. But these MCL injuries are all about whether or not that knee joint is stable enough to play on. And it sounds like the Panthers are thinking that that's not going to recover in time to play this weekend.
It is the Audible Live here Thursday night on our YouTube channel. Dr. Jene Bramel going around the NFL talking about those injuries. And Julian Edelman is improving. They say has progressed in a positive direction, according to Bill Belichick, who added that Edelman has not suffered any setbacks. Last I checked, Dr. Jene, and this was this morning, he's eligible to return to open up the 21-day window. But Belichick did not indicate how soon they take that step. So progress in a positive direction. Okay, what does that mean?
Yeah, I think it means that the cleanup procedure that he had went as well as expected. He's feeling better than he has in some time because he's not dealing with whatever they decided to deal with, whether it was loose bodies or getting a little bit of drainage done so that he doesn't have as much inflammation in there. Take a look around and make sure everything's okay. And to hear that he's moving better in those, off rehab field individual drills is a really reassuring sign. But as you said, it's hard to get a read on whether or not the Patriots are going to do much with him. But the fact that he's doing more, even though they haven't designated him to return to practice, I think he is a player, knowing the Patriots and him knowing the offense as well as he does with Josh McDaniels there, that if he's feeling well enough to go, then we'll probably see him put on the active roster. I don't think you're going to see him get double-digit targets, obviously, in the first week back, but there's a good chance that he'll play and play effectively if he's activated. More likely, as you said, the fact that he's not been designated to return makes next week the more likely target, but certainly wouldn't put past the Patriots to not practice him, but still activate him and let him play.
Gene, on the spectrum between the European sports car and that old farm truck that has hundreds of thousands of miles on it, but still somehow runs and hauls and goes over through the mud and all that good stuff, cover these. He's kind of on that sports car side of things. So how confident should we be in him this weekend?
I am not very confident, and I don't like to put a lot into practice video in terms of it doesn't really impress me if things are looking a little bit better there. The single route that I saw posted of Calvin Ridley on Wednesday was not reassuring at all. Couldn't stop quickly, didn't change directions quickly, had a hard time resetting his feet to catch the ball, and then clearly looked uncomfortable at the end of the route. Today's video that I saw on Thursday looked a little bit better, but Wednesday had me nervous. And as we've seen with Joe Mixon, we've seen with Chris Carson, you can say that there's a relatively lower grade midfoot sprain on MRI on the imaging, but that doesn't mean that a player can bear weight on that small area of the foot and do everything that's needed to be done. So I'm hopeful that that was just sort of the absolute worst fragment of video that we could have seen on Wednesday. The fact that he was back in a limited practice and running those same routes again on Thursday, pretty reassuring. But he's got me nervous that he may not be all the way back yet.
So what did the Kansas City Chiefs running back coach have to get two of his three running backs who play on the field sick? Because obviously it's not the players being irresponsible. It's obviously the coaching staff on all of these things, right? So actually, what's going on with their illnesses?
Well, it doesn't seem that they're COVID illnesses. Neither one of them were put on the COVID reserve list today, which I think teams are pretty much routinely doing if there's a concern for that. And since they're listed with an illness that, and they were if they were put on the COVID list, we would know that would be a multiple week situation, at least 10 days. But most of these players, when we see them listed with illness on Wednesday and Thursday, have time to get those two consecutively negative COVID tests, have their symptoms resolved, and time to play on game day. And nothing I saw from Kansas City suggested that anybody locally was concerned that this was going to bleed into the weekend and potentially threaten game time, but that can happen from time to time. So again, a limited practice or more on Friday would be pretty reassuring for both Edwards-Helaire and Darrell Williams, and hopefully that's the way things are borne out as Kansas City practices the rest of the week.
It's the Audible Live, ladies and gentlemen. Camera one, camera two, camera one, camera two, camera one, camera two. Okay, there we go. Dr. Gene, as we wrap up, of course, tomorrow, or not tomorrow, next Thursday is Thanksgiving. Hopefully everyone stays safe in your travels if you're allowed to travel and all those sorts of good things. But one thing that is a tradition in my household that I will make a tradition on the Audible household is when we all hold hands before we eat dinner and we say what we're thankful for. So, Gene, I guess I'll start. I'm thankful for you, brother. Thankful to have you as a friend, as a confidant, as a mentor, even from afar. Just, looking at what you do and how you behave as a man is something to, pattern and to model and to look up to. And to, I talked about you the other day on the show, like, Gene will come in with this zinger. Like you're very observant, you're very quiet generally, and then you'll come through with boom, the most succinct thing someone could say, and it's often very, very awesome and tickles the ribs, shall we say, in terms of the humor button. So thankful for you, brother. So as we go around our football guys table here, of course we got a half hour left, but Gene, before you bow out from the table, you push back from the table, right? Had enough to eat already. I just wanted to know, what are you thankful for, brother?
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo the same things, and I imagine we all do the same thing. I'm, you know how well I like to take compliments, so you got me thrown a little bit here. So, no, I for sure, I've said this many times over. I am appreciative of being able to be a part of our football guys family, and you guys in particular are a lot of the reasons why I'm still around doing what we're doing. I enjoy what I'm doing, but a lot of the reason that we're still doing what we're doing is because of the friendships that the four of us have made together. So I'll push away from the table with that, and don't mean to just kind of piggyback on what you said, but I think it's important that we all share those things with each other. I know we do it privately, but it's nice that you did that publicly too. I appreciate it.
Bloom, you're up.
Oh, I'll say I'm thankful for we throw the word genius around. I'll take this opportunity and I'll do something more formal, as Brian brought up in the chat room. We throw the word genius around a lot, but David Dodds is truly a genius. Of all the people I've been around in my life, I don't think I've been in awe of someone's brain more than one David Dodds. And as I like to say about Bob Harris and Joe, we're playing in a sandbox that a lot of people created before us, and it's the cat's out of the bag that this is going to be David's last year with football guys. Cecil, you were at the other day, see this, because people were like, where can I get one of these hats? You can't, because these are custom hats. David, just to show what a gem he is, sent these hats out. They're limited edition, et cetera, et cetera. And it's something. I mean, I was emotional. I was touched really when I got the package, because I think it really encapsulates a lot of what you were talking about, Cease, and what Gene was talking about, which is just we come together with this handshake of football, or we respect each other's brains and things like that. But really, it was about the friends we made along the way, and I'm thankful that my path somehow crossed with David Dodds, because that's how I ended up here talking to y'all on tonight. If I hadn't gone to a Super Bowl party in Austin where he was at, and we sat and rapped about football for the whole time. It was a boring Super Bowl. Okay, I wasn't like chewing his ear because it was it was the Indianapolis Chicago Super Bowl.
Oh God.
So I'm going to use this moment to take a tribute to David, and who'll continue to be in our lives, and whatever things, greener pastures he finds. I look forward to hearing about it, and I know that he'll make everything around him better.
Matt, what are you thankful for, brother?
I'm thankful for sweatpants, because after we eat at this table, I have all this damn turkey. I want to be able to put my hand down there and just kind of, no, but seriously.
And then sniff.
Yeah. So then, when you talk about, I mean, obviously I'm thankful for all of you guys. I mean, I probably wouldn't, it was nice for the first time I remember in the house that I was in at the time, in my little converted garage / RSP offices, to be the only reception I had to be able to talk to Bloom and Cecil on the phone on the Audible for the first time was in the closet of that little room. and just thinking, and I remember you guys asking, well, what are you hoping to do with this? And I remember saying, well, I hope to be able to walk about 20 feet from my bedroom to my office every day and be working from home doing this type of work. So that kind of dovetails from the fact that, with you guys and getting the chance to be on the air with you on a regular basis and to, have kind of 4 like-minded folks who love the game and love talking about the game in the way that we do. I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful to having a friend like Gene, who is also a terrific editor who can keep my sense of humor going on a monthly, during the month that I write the RSP and write sick jokes and the editing comments of things that I'm writing in there and gets me as well from that perspective. And the friendships obviously that we have made over those years. And most importantly, I'm thankful for everybody who listens here. I mean, it's like, the readers that we have, the listeners that we have, the interaction that we get, and just the enthusiasm that you provide is, it's a constant reminder of how, how appreciative that you are of the work of good work and the work that people do. And it continually inspires me to try and put forth the best that I can put forth. So I appreciate that.
Fantastic. And Dr. Gene, we'll see you in a couple of weeks, buddy.
That's right. We got next week off, don't we?
Yeah.
Very happy
Hence the
Thanksgiving to
sweatpants.
everybody. Well, yeah, that's true. I already got some Christmas sweatpants on here. I won't share them with y'all. But for those of you that are traveling next week, please stay safe, stay healthy, stay careful. This Thanksgiving has kind of snuck up on many of us this year, I think, for lots of different time with your family or in person or virtually. Give everybody a little extra love through this holiday season. And to echo what Matt says, I appreciate everybody listening too. So y'all have a great couple of weeks, and we'll see you on the other side.
Love and okra, Gene. Love and okra.
I'm there.
Fantastic. As always, he is Dr. Jene Bramel. Check him out at footballguys.com and follow him on Twitter at Jene Bramel. Sigmund, we need a game update.
Yeah, just a nice methodical drive, really by both teams. And Dan Arnold gets a touchdown while we were talking. And then Carlos Hyde's looking good as Seattle goes down the field. So Seattle's leading 23-14. Hyde's looking good. And I think Pete Carroll's feeling better now that there's some run game going on. And again, we have seen Russell Wilson pull in a little bit, but this is a big game, a lot on the line, and like Matt was alluding to with Kyler Murray's injury, he's going to have to pull a rabbit out of a hat here, and he's been able to do it lately. But right now, the momentum is on Seattle's side.
Matt, let's talk about that. Pete Carroll feeling good about this Russian attack and how that could help Russ cook a little bit better after last week's disappointing performance.
Yeah, they just really haven't had a running back who can both run inside and outside, and having Hyde, obviously early in the game, they're testing it outside. And I think anybody who's a fan is watching that and going, what are they doing? They're not getting much on the outside there. And they've got 2 big backs in Scarborough and Hyde that they're toting out there, and they're not running it inside. But I think they were trying to set up the play action game so that they could boot Russell out and buy him time, because one of the big differences in this game is that Russell Wilson's buying a lot of time. I mean, 4 to 6 seconds whenever he's going back there. And that's not because of the line, so the fact that he's able to get that much time back there is probably a product of them trying to run outside a little bit early, because later on in this game, you've seen as the half started to come to a close and this third quarter, they're running it up the middle more. And that's where Hyde and even a guy like Scarborough, who had like a 12-yard gain late in the half, really shine. And I think that they wanted to kind of stretch things out a little bit here and there. And these guys are such good tacklers out on the outside, guys like Budda Baker, who can just kind of see the angle immediately and hit it without any adjustment. They wanted to get those guys out on notice. I think Carroll's probably happier with the fact that they're able to generate at least some sort of running game to set up the passing game to give Russ room to be able to maneuver the pocket, because they know that, with the likes of Damian Lewis, who can't seem to do anything without committing a penalty tonight, they don't have the strongest offensive line. And with the defense, it's nice that they're playing decent defense, in the fact that this is a zone defense that I've joked has been like those local furniture stores. Everything's being given away. It's like, and when you watch the zone defense, it's like against Buffalo the other week and against the Rams, it's like, a receiver catches the ball in the flat and they're running for miles, it feels like. I mean, so this is a team that normally doesn't blitz, but they're finding some blitz looks that have worked a little bit, and then they've been able to do some things with twists and stunts with Carlos Dunlap to also be able to kind of put Kyler Murray on his toes a bit, because Kyler Murray is so great in terms of being mobile, but he's not the greatest maneuver guy in the pocket. Like, you can see the difference between Russ and Kyler. Kyler runs to every spot. It's like, oh, I want to go over here. Oh, let me go over here. Let me go over here. And it's, and so he's not as calm. But obviously he's a more dynamic runner. But that problem is that he tends to hurry to the point that he can hurry into the backside of a lineman or into an oncoming defender a little more than what Russell does. He's just not as gifted in that way. And I think that Seattle kind of molding the pocket a certain way and being able to bring secondary pressure has been helpful in that regard.
I just wish Russ had a little bit more Michael Jordan in him. And by that, I mean being a big jerk. Because when Russell Wilson goes into the Hall of Fame, I want to get the invite so that he can point to me in the crowd and be like, there's that moron that asked me if I wanted to go to Denver and back up Tim Tebow at the Senior Bowl. So, like Michael Jordan pointed out, his high school coach, I'm not taking responsibility for Russell Wilson. That's Matt Waldman, people. But yes, if Russell Wilson had a little more jerk in him, then maybe I'd get my own trip to Canton.
Well, he's pretty crazy to be like going to Pete Carroll in that Packers game after the worst half of his life going, we're going to win this,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and they did. I mean, for someone to believe that might be even more insane than than being an absolute, jerk in that regard. But then again, he looked like pretty much like a jerk, because I thought he was going to he looked like he was ready to have a bro down with you in that moment. He literally had his hands back. I was interviewing that Texas A&M receiver, and I'm watching it, and he stood straight up and put his hands back, and it looked like a South Park episode. And I'm literally, and you stood back a minute, and he realized what he did, and then he calmed down. So I think inside he's like he's like House of Cards devious. Like, he's a predator hiding in plain sight.
Right. I just remember him standing up, and he was shorter than me, and I was like, "Is it go time?"
Well, he had short man syndrome at that moment. It popped out for the briefest minute, and then he stuffed it back in and was like,
"Right,
okay, can't show that."
Yeah. Got away. Save that for the field. Save it for the field. Bloom, I saw you in the chat room talking about the Taysom Hill thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's Thursday night. We record on Wednesday and Thursday mornings, and our access to information is limited because practices are still going on. Whatever is whatever. At Thursday night, have your takes on the New Orleans quarterback situation changed at all? How are you looking at it now with some more practices, maybe some more insight, some more information? Well, fantasy GM's hugest question this week, right? I mean,
yeah.
What do you do with your Saints?
Yeah. Not really changed. If anything, I'm a little more confident in Taysom Hill with respect to those leagues where he's tight end eligible. I would say that only Andrews, Waller, and Kelsey of him, and there are more coin flip guys like say Dallas Goedert. Matthew Stafford and his issue, I think, makes Hill a better play over TJ Hawkinson. And as far as your Saints, you're going to play Kamara, you're going to play Thomas. And I think that Sanders, Cook, these guys fall below the threshold just because of how poor Jameis Winston looked last week. Now,
what about this, Bloom? What about this?
Yeah.
Not to cut you off, but I just want to remind everyone at Florida State and with the Buccaneers, Jameis effing loves the tight end. Loves it.
Sure.
So maybe could and maybe what the heck flex and Latavius Murray.
Look, I'm not going to. Well, with Latavius Murray, I'll just say this real quickly on Latavius Murray. With the Alvin Kamara issue, this is a great guy to trade for because he's 30. So in dynasty leagues, he's you can get him for a 5th round pick. If Kamara's foot flares up, we know that Murray can be a league winner. And in this week against Atlanta, actually the run defense hasn't been too bad, so I don't know that I would go with Murray. And with Cook, I'm not going to talk anybody out of a tight end outside of the top 5. I mean, am I going to say how can you play Jared Cook over Logan Thomas or something like that? No, we'll see about how this offense looks. But going back to Taysom Hill, and this is something we've talked about a couple of times this week already, Cease. I went back and looked, and last week in the fourth quarter, Taysom Hill had 30 rushing yards. And it's fair to say that when this offense is nursing a lead, the Taysom Hill offense is probably going to be their shortest path from the A to B being ending the game in the victory. Because I mean, it's and now that Taysom Hill's had a few successful passes, as long as they can keep defenses, have that sense of timing when to call the pass off of those plays, when they're keying off of Taysom Hill or catching a Deontay Harris on an end around or something like that, like on a jet sweep, so that you don't let them just key on Taysom Hill. Like we've talked about, Cease, this is almost what this has all been building towards, unless it's really building towards Taysom Hill being the starter next year, which is in this kind of situation, have a dual mode offense that really give a defense a lot to think about coming in week and them to change modes where it's effortless for your offense. Really, it's whether Jameis Winston holds up his part of the bargain. I think that there's a lot of optimism. I saw that the prop bet on Jameis Winston's like 230 yards passing. That seems really high to me. Because the Saints we saw last year with Teddy, without Breeze, they're going to become a more conservative team. And so I think it's more up to Winston to limit turnovers and just give the team a sense of calm when he's out there, which he really didn't do last week, but thankfully they were Mullins 49ers. But there's a lot of suspense here, Cease, not just for this week, but going forward, because there's so little give between like seed 1 and seed 7 in the NFC right now.
Yeah, it's a tight race to be sure. And Matt, how are you approaching this Saints situation? Of course, everyone loves to make fun of Jameis for the 30 for 30, and he obviously didn't look that good last week. However, the assets there with the Saints are pretty damn good. And maybe a week of preparation helps him in his production this week. And then, how does Taysom Hill factor in? Like, this is again, huge mystery right now.
Yeah, a week of preparation, a little bit of rust from not starting, and there's a lot more things that he has to take under consideration than Taysom Hill, who basically is a gadget player. I mean, we can talk about him being a potential starter down the line and how good he might be and how he threw a couple of passes. Well, Baker Mayfield's thrown a couple of passes and looked good for a time. Marcus Mariota threw passes for a little bit and looked good for a time. And we're going to talk about a guy who's thrown a couple passes a game and what he's going to be. He might turn out to be that, but based on a couple of passes, what we want to say is he's a gadget player. So yes, it's up to Jameis Winston to shoulder most of the load in terms of the intellectual, conceptual, and technical skills of being a quarterback. And when you look at it from that perspective, I'm a little more looking at Cook as the most volatile player on this roster. Like if you're going to take a chance with Cook, it's great because, like you said, Cecil, he loves the tight end. But if there's a player who screws up routes and does the wrong thing at the wrong time at the most pivotal moment on that offense, it's Jared Cook. Jared Cook still is that guy. And him and Jameis Winston, it's kind of like Jared Cook is a stick of dynamite or like the accelerant, or Jameis Winston's the accelerant and Jared Cook's the explosive. So this could be a good thing or a bad thing. And I think you're going to see both with that. I honestly think Emmanuel Sanders could be a better play, because some of the best things that Jameis does is throw in the middle of the field on timing routes with that arm. And the best route runner on that team in the intermediate range of the field, I'm talking after 15 yards, not the booster seat Mike Thomas, 8 to 15 yard thing that he does, is going to be Emmanuel Sanders. So I actually like Emmanuel Sanders a little more now than I did that I have seen with Breeze at this stage, because I thought I would expect more of that with Breeze. Michael Thomas obviously is a guy you're gonna count on and see how that goes. But I think the yardage is gonna be there, because I think also you can't be conservative like Teddy Bridgewater if you're not careful like Teddy Bridgewater. And Jameis Winston is not careful like Teddy Bridgewater. So I would expect that we're going to see 2-3 interceptions if they're going to keep going with him. They're going to live with the fact that they're going to have to come from behind, that Winston's going to have a number of more. He's going to have 1 or 2 or 3 more drives in a half than what you would see from Breeze, because one of those drives is going to be like a 60-yard drive that ends in interception, because he might be the worst red zone quarterback in the past 5 years in terms of the long-term starters, whereas Drew Brees might be the best we've ever seen as a red zone quarterback. And so that's why Taysom Hill is like being so relied upon, because they don't want Jameis in the red zone. I mean, that's not a guy you want to rely on in that regard. So to me, I like what Bloom had to say. I would add just that I think Emmanuel Sanders, I'm a little bit higher on than he is. And I think Jared Cook is kind of that boom bust, most volatile player. Like one week you're going to be like, I got to go get him. And the next week you're like, I wish I'd never had that on my roster.
Nothing comes easy.
Right.
Yeah.
Bloom, what's the over under on Jameis's interceptions?
Yeah, well,
that seems to be a pretty interesting prop.
I think the prop was a half interception, and you got better odds betting under the half than over. So I think the over was kind of like a minus 110, and the under, like betting on him not throwing interception, was like a plus 140.
Okay.
So, but I think this could be a situation where, depending on how the game unfolds, the answer could change. And that's what's going to be really interesting to watch, is how Sean Payton manages this, and of course whether Atlanta can make a game out of it. So outside of the big 5 games this weekend, that's certainly the most fascinating storyline.
Atlanta can definitely make a game out of it. The way that they're playing and the way they're responding to Raheem Morris, and just how much those two teams hate each other. Now, we do have new information from when we did the preview show, Bloom. So the DeAndre Swift thing. Kerryon Johnson, Adrian Peterson splitting time. We've got that. We've got Matt Breida, who has practiced fully and is going to play against the Broncos. So Salvon Ahmed. Does that change anything? Obviously, with the Swift, and probably not going to play, concussion protocol, whatever. So let's talk about Adrian Peterson, Kerryon Johnson, and then with Breida being back, we saw a 1-2 punch work for the Raiders last week, and hell, it could work for the Dolphins again this week with Ahmed and, of course, Breida.
Yeah, I think takes a little bit of edge off of Ahmed's upside, just because you would expect Breida to have about 10 touches, and you might not get Ahmed to the 21 carries he had last week. Peterson, this is tough, right? Because especially it's Carolina, PJ Walker or Will Grier. I don't know if we know who's going to start. It's not going to be Teddy, or at least we're pretty sure it's not going to be Teddy. And this could easily be a game where Peterson, Stafford's going to play with some contraption on his thumb or something. I won't be shocked if Peterson gets 25 carries in this game. I won't be surprised if Matt Patricia, the game plan here, Darrell Bevell, is just, this is why we have Adrian Peterson. And this is actually the kind of situation that Adrian Peterson thrives on, right? I mean, he's just waiting for you to come to him and say, we're going to need you to carry the ball 25 or 30 times today. He's like, yes, this is my happy day. This is what I'm thankful for, right? So Peterson is a what-the-heck flex, but he has a high ceiling this week, again, because of the matchup. I was looking at it today, and I think it's Josh Jacobs, Austin Eckler, Todd Gurley. I think there's been 5 running backs that have had their best fantasy day of the entire year against Carolina. You probably let me get the Ronald Jones, of course, last, and who am I forgetting here? Leonard touchdowns and over 100 yards against them. 5 running backs. They haven't played that many games. Like half of the time, the running back going against the Panthers has his best game all year. I think that Peterson's going to make it 6. Now, will it be 6 to the tune of like 90 yards, or will it be 120, 130 yards on touchdown? That's the part that's more difficult to call. Kerryon Johnson, I think, is just a passing down back for them now, and a lot of the things he does for the team don't necessarily show up in the box score. I'm glad that he still has a role and is contributing, but I'm still just sad that this is the way that his career went, because we obviously had high hopes for him, and I think physically it's just not going to happen.
Right. And Matt, can I tell a story about you, brother?
Oh,
can I tell a story?
Sure.
Okay, so we jump in the car as we're going to the Senior Bowl every year, and I think this was before my foot started acting up, because Matt basically babysat me last year at the Senior Bowl because I'm old and I have heel spurs, and I couldn't walk, and I got food poisoning from that damn cheese curd place we went to anyway. So yeah, I know you're my brother, Matt, because you put up with a lot with me last year. But
no big deal, man.
If you remember, the first thing you asked me about the Shrine game, you said, how did James Robinson look? And we talked about it. You can't really see much, no live tackling, whatever is whatever. But okay, there's that Matt Waldman brain. I want to pick about Salvon Ahmed and just what you saw from him at Washington, what the Dolphins are doing to get the most out of him. And then Breida being back, again, this is against Denver. So there could be plenty of success on the ground, especially with Tua. I think the best word to describe Tua right now, because everybody, Tua, exciting. I think it's just efficient. I think it's efficiency that's making Tua look so good. Obviously, the defense scoring a touchdown a game, and then the ground game. So, what did you think of Salvin Ahmed at Washington? And what are your thoughts with Breida being back this week?
Well, watching Salvin Ahmed at Washington, what I saw was basically a scat back who had really excellent burst, who could catch the football, but he's a guy who wasn't really a short yardage player, wasn't a between the tackles, break tackles type of guy. And when you look at this Chan Gailey offense, and with Tua, I think, and this offensive line really more than anything, it seems like the best match for this team after looking at what's gone on with Jordan Howard is that they need quick hitting running backs, guys who can hit that hole fast and get the yards. And then also guys who can be good delay draw type of players, kind of pick their spot and use their burst well and get, kind of be those microwave type of running backs who can heat up fast. And I think Salvin Ahmed showed that. Obviously, he didn't even make the 49ers roster, and Jermichael Hasty got ahead of him, and Hasty was a more complete back, if you ask me. But what you're seeing with the Dolphins is they're running draws, they're running delays, they're running types of plays where there's usually a big backside crease or a big crease in the middle, and Ahmed is just gashing them, hitting straight downhill and getting what he can. He's been bad in short yardage. So I think Breida will get a little bit more looks from that perspective when he comes back in. The thing with Breida is that he's, he is talented enough to be a starter. He hasn't played great this year, but it's been kind of a limited split. And I feel like they probably felt like that Gaskin was so reliable early on that they just kind of continued to roll with him from an assignment to an assignment standpoint as a receiver, passing game blocker, things like that. So I think Ahmed obviously can get, between 12 and 15 carries in this game, and somewhere between 15 to 17 touches. So that's not bad. But Breida certainly is going to cut into some of that depending on how well he plays early on. But long term, I'm kind of more wait and see on Ahmed. And the one thing I'll note about Tua that I'm really excited about is that he understands leverage pretty well. Like he's very immediate about noting the leverage of the defender and being able to get it out there. And he's not afraid to thread the needle. The problem is that we've seen the successful side of him threading the needle for the past 3 weeks. And there are at least 3 to 5 plays a game where one of them you're like, dude, that could have been an interception. That was like so close. So they're going to come. But the fact that but at the same time, it also speaks to his ability to know when to let the ball go and throw with anticipation and get it in a spot for his receivers. There's just been a couple that have been a little bit off and the leverage wasn't there and he got lucky.
Matt, what draft class were you for Football Guys? I was 2005. Bloom was 2006. You were...
I think 2009, and David was, David by way of me calling you up and going, hey, is there anything you think Football Guys would be interested in having me work there? And you had me call David, and David I used to do leagues with, and he was always very quiet in those chat rooms and
which
seeing
is
him
funny
on
because
forums.
of like special chat rooms. If you ever got Dodds in a drafting chat room, he's like, I'm still working off my top 50.
Yeah,
it'd be
exactly.
Like the 14th round.
The first time I heard Dodds, he was nothing like I expected. And he was exactly the way you would expect how Bloom talks about him, which is like he is. The guy is a genius, and he is someone who, when you listen to him talk, you would expect to see him like in one of those college movies where like they're dealing with like super geniuses who go watch Real Genius, the old 80s movie with Val Kilmer.
Right.
And David Dodds would belong in that dorm room.
He's Laszlo. He's got the thing worked out. I remember Laszlo had that thing where he was going to win every prize in the giveaway. He hacked how to do it.
Yeah, but he's Laszlo combined with that chick who's like the young woman who falls in love with the main character who talks literally like in torrents of words. Like literally, David, like when David starts telling you things, it's like he can go, man, and it's impressive because what you want to hear it is just, but he can go.
Yeah, and anytime he'll ask you a question, like when you start answering, he's already determined the rest of your answer, and he's like, and then so he's getting to levels with you. And one thing great about David Dodds, as we take a moment out here, as it's out of the bag, as Bloom said earlier, like David Dodds is retiring and leaving Football Guys after this season. There's such a thing with Football Guys that's been such a dynamic. Like, are you a Joe guy? Or are you a David guy? I begged basically to be on Football Guys for 2 years until I won a message board contest where I played against the staff and I won that league. And I said, I'm going to win this league and you guys are going to hire me. I won the league. They did hire me. So that was 2005, but I had begged for 2 years because I started on the air in Denver in 2003. So I'd beg, Football Guys. And I was a Joe guy who became a David guy. And now both of them like me. So I just, and it's not like David didn't like me, right?
And I don't think they don't dislike either. They dislike anybody, those guys,
Right. But when you're hired, you can tell, like, well, were you a Joe guy or were you a David guy? And I was a Joe guy because I wore him down, like with the emails, like, well, hire me, please hire me. And just, again, Bloom, like when I got that hat, and I read his note, and I won't go over it because it's personal, but I was like, I teared up, man. Yeah. Like, that's a legend. That's a fantasy football Hall of Famer. That's a legend who, said how much he appreciated me. And that really felt good. And just, we're going to miss him. We're going to miss him. And I'm going to miss interacting with him because his mind, he can solve a Rubik's Cube in 22 seconds, people. Like, he is a genius. The way he thinks about football, his passion for the Chargers and for football, like, it's just awesome to be around. So,
and he applies it in a funny and devious sort of way, which is also like equally fun, which he's not like, it's not like you're talking to an academic. And if you were, you're talking to an academic with a really great and really bent sense of humor, which is a lot of fun.
Like an academic who uses the chem lab for other things at night that only a few people know about because he has a key.
And it's a practical joke, and no one would ever find out if someone didn't spill the beans. Yeah,
right.
Bloom, any more final thoughts here? As we wish David so much success and happiness, and he's, not to get too personal, but he's gotten married in recent years and found happiness with Carrie, and I love them both. I think they're incredible, and certainly going to miss him for sure.
His DNA is always going to be in this thing that we do. It's like we're in a house that he was an architect of. So even if Dodd's name isn't on something, or he's not there contributing what he contributes every day, which is so much, that he's still part of Football Guys. Like, he can't, it's the hats. I mean, like, you can't see the Black-Eyed Joe and not think of David. I think it's a beautiful thing that, like you talked about with the moment when we talked about we were thankful for, that we all impact each other's lives more than we realize, and it's good to take time out to acknowledge that. And I think he did it, probably when we were all wanting to be sentimental or tell us how much he meant to us and how much he made happen for us in our lives. He beat us to the punch because he's David, And on the real quick on the Rubik's Cube thing, he has to, and I've told this on the show, I think 5, 20, 30 times, I don't know. He has to put graphite in between the cubes because his brain is faster than the Rubik's Cube. So that's the only way that he can actually see how fast he can solve a Rubik's Cube is to grease it up. And I could tell and folks should know I have Dodds on the couch every year, and he was on the couch in August. We talked about this. He was original 70s skater where he loved to tell the story about his dad would know the construction sites with the pools, so they could stake them out. Like, we're talking about OG skaters,
right?
Devo, like true counterculture.
True counterculture, not the marketed counterculture we get today.
Exactly. So I'm just lucky again. I just feel thankful for the day that I crossed his path, because my life changed. It led to me crossing paths with you all, with everybody in the chat room, this community. And we'd like to talk about how football guys is there's a lot of love in the community, a lot of sense of being present in each other's lives. And I think the tone that David and Joe set just made that, without having to communicate it or express it, an understanding of that's why we're all here.
Well, I know this. I would like to see David Dodds was actually a ranked backgammon pro.
Yes.
And as a youngster, like as a teen, I played a lot of backgammon. I've challenged him to a game, and he was basically like, he just kind of looked at me and shook his head. But like, and I play, like, I'm pretty good, but I know that, like, I actually wouldn't, David, if you're listening to this at any point, I would gladly lose a couple $100 to you if we could donate to charity, because if I actually do win a game or two, I am talking some major mess, brother. I am talking some significant mess. Like, I am going to put it on you like you think you do when you do these drafts with us. I've got my 5th ranked player still in round 45, Yeah, there we go.
It's fantastic. And you guys in the chat room, you listeners, fantastic as well. And man alive, we all just help each other, right? It's all about being neighborly and doing the right thing and being a good person, and just having fun together and loving each other, helping out in your communities, all those sorts of good things, spreading that positive vibe. That's what it's about. We certainly appreciate each and every one of you out there for listening to the show, for watching on our YouTube channel, and like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid and all that kind of stuff. It's more about the relationship, honestly, than it is anything else. Our download numbers are incredible, off the charts, whatever. Like, yeah, it's just about the relationship we have with you guys. So again, thank you all very much. If you're listening to my voice right now, know that you are appreciated. So thank you all very much. I'm Cecil Lammey for the fantastic Dr. Jene Bramel, the great Matt Waldman, and the amazing Sigmund Bloom, saying stay tuned and stay frosty.